Today's episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored, as always, by Dexcom, Omnipod, and Dancing for Diabetes. You can go to myomnipod.com/juicebox to get a free, no-obligation demo of the Omnipod right now. You can go to Dexcom.com/juicebox to find out more about the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor. And of course, you can go to dancingfordiabetes.com. That's dancing, the number 4, diabetes.com, just to see adorable pictures of children with diabetes dancing. There's other reasons to go, but the cute kids are the best reason. There's also links in the show notes and at juiceboxpodcast.com. When you click on them, it helps the show.
This is Izzy Meehan, and you're listening to the Juicebox Podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 187 of the Juicebox Podcast. As you just heard, today's guest is Izzy Meehan. I know you recognize Izzy's name. I've spoken about her a number of times. She is a high school senior from Ohio who recently had a near-fatal car accident when her blood sugar got low. Izzy's on the show today to tell us about the accident and her recovery and what she's learned since then. Please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should ever be considered advice, medical or otherwise, and to always consult a physician before making changes to your healthcare plan.
The first thing I do remember is waking up on Saturday morning, and the accident was on Tuesday. But the first thing I remember was waking up, they took the breathing tube out, and I said, "What's my blood sugar?" Hi, I'm Izzy Meehan.
How old are you?
I'm 17 years old.
17. Okay. How long have you had type 1 diabetes?
Well, I was diagnosed at 13, so I've had it for over 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Your math is strong, Izzy. Very strong.
Thank you.
Seriously, you're welcome. Seriously, you'd be very proud of that. Some people stumble. Are you a senior in high school?
I am. I'm a senior at Ursuline Academy.
You're a senior in high school. You've had type 1 diabetes since you were 13, and you're on the podcast today because maybe I have to start this out. Okay. So I feel like it was just still this year, right? It was in 2018? Your incident, right, was in 2018. And I got a note from your mother. She sent me a message and very sort of briefly explained to me that you had been in a car accident and that she was hoping for people just to sort of send you messages of like good wishes and things like that.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, like on my end, I was sort of like, wait, what's happening? Because a lot of people listen to the podcast and a lot of people read the blog, and I know some of their names. Like, do you know what I mean? Like there's names that pop up in front of me. I'm like, oh, I recognize that name.
Yeah.
And your mother's name was one of those names. I was like, I recognize this person. And so we're talking back and forth for a second, and I'm like, wait, hold on. Can we call each other? Because this is, I think I'm missing exactly what's going on. So the next thing I know, because I didn't really understand the timeline of everything, I was speaking to your mother, and she was at the hospital. I have to tell you that, like, from my perspective, obviously your situation was worse than mine, and your mother's was worse than mine, but I was really, like, I felt like someone kind of, like, smacked me in the head with a board, because suddenly sort of this person I just tangentially know through the internet is telling me this horrible story, and I'm trying to both be supportive of what she's saying and absorb how I even know you guys. You know what I mean? And so it was all very, very strange for a second, but I want you to sort of kind of fill in the space between that phone call and what happened to you. So you're at school one day and your blood sugar gets low?
So I went to school that day, and I didn't get a lot of sleep the night before just because I was studying for a bunch of tests. I had a lot of homework, and I was healthy during my lunch. And that day I had an unusual lunch, with a bunch of carbs, and I didn't treat for all the carbs properly, and blood sugar went over 300. And so I just kept correcting, and it was 300, I corrected, 350, I corrected again. So I kind of just kept stacking it. I wasn't giving over what my pump said to give, but I just kept correcting.
Mm-hmm.
And then my blood sugar finally came down, and I stabilized at around 100. Both of my parents called me before I left school to go to my ACT tutoring session just to make sure I was fine and like I was responding, and my CGM, my Dexcom still said I was like stable at 100. So I drove to my tutoring session, and I don't really remember anything about the tutoring session. Like the last thing I really remember was being at school that day.
Okay. Well, let me go back for a second. Let me unpack a couple things. So you ate sort of an unusually large carb heavy lunch that you under bolused for at the beginning, but then as your blood sugar was going up, you're like, oh geez, and you kind of kept after it. You felt like you got it back to where you wanted to have it, and then you drove to a tutoring session. Did you complete the tutoring session?
Yeah.
Because those things are so boring that if you don't remember those, that might have nothing to do with diabetes, first of all, or insulin or anything else. I watched my son do those in our dining room, and I would pull my wife aside and I would be like, that kid is a trooper. I'm like, I would be asleep on the table by now, you know? So how far was the ride from, like, so let's put some times on it. What time of day did you leave school? When the show ends, don't forget to check out dancingfordiabetes.com. That's dancing, the number 4, diabetes.com.
I left school around 3 o'clock.
Okay. You went where for the session? Just
to a library, which was about like 15 minutes away.
Okay. So you're about 15 minutes away from school, and you're at the library. How long was the session with the tutor?
An hour.
How did you do on the ACTs? Have you taken them yet?
Yeah, I took it a few months ago, and I did good, so I'm finished now.
All right, I just wanted to make sure that this was all worth it. So, okay, so you've got...
Yeah.
So hey, you're breaking up just a little bit. So let me ask you, are you on a computer or a phone?
A computer.
You're on a computer. Is there a cell phone near you?
Yes.
Can you move it away a little bit? Because I think you're getting, like... It's interfering a little bit.
Yeah, I'll move it away right now. Okay.
Thank you. Okay. That's good. It's a break in the tension. So, so you've completed the tutoring, which I'm assuming was an hour. And so with driving, what are we talking about? Like 4:30 you leave this tutoring thing, maybe?
Yeah, around 4:30 I left, and it was 15 minutes from my house, so it wasn't a long drive or anything.
And I don't want to like build unnecessary suspense because your story is going to be terrible enough. We don't need suspense, but you didn't make it home, right?
No.
No. Okay. So what ended up, well, I guess you don't know what happened, do you? Like for real, like you.
Well, no. Yeah, I don't remember anything that happened, but like I know both of my parents have talked to witnesses, and they said that like they saw me passed out in the car, like in the driver's seat, and like they, like most people thought I was on drugs, and the ambulance was going to give me Narcan, assuming that I'd overdosed on drugs. But my mom luckily used her Find My Friends app and knew that I was in a remote place in town. So she called 911 and told them that I was a type 1 diabetic. And they said, well, how do you know like that she got in an accident? She's like, I just know. Like she could see my blood sugar like stabilized around 80, and she knew that the Dexcom got stuck there because it's done that before. I've gone from like a 400 blood sugar back down to like 80, been stuck at 80 for like an hour, checked my blood sugar, and it was like...
You've been lower than that. Right. So she felt like that she had seen this process before and she had this bad feeling. Plus you were supposed to be somewhere that you weren't, I assume, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So she's able to kind of jump in with EMS and let them know, hey, look, you know, my daughter has, you're going to find her in a second, and she has diabetes. So she wanted them to know that. That's really cool. But you were people said that you were passed out in the car. People said you were passed out in the car after the accident, or they could see while you were driving that you weren't conscious.
They could see my head. They could see my head like leaning forward while I was driving.
Gotcha. So you were out.
Yeah, and they said that I was probably going over 100 miles per hour.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
What did you strike that stopped your car finally?
It was like I hit a bunch of things like 3 mailboxes, and then just like a big boulder that kind of just stopped it all together.
That'll stop the car. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, is there any part of you, and I don't want to make light of this, but is there any part of you that wishes you could have been a little awake to see the mailboxes like pop up in the air, like in a movie? Or have you ever thought it through? No, not really. So,
No.
so Izzy, it is incredible that you and I are talking. It is incredible that you're talking to anybody, anywhere, because you drove a car unconscious, very fast, into a giant piece of rock that stopped the car. How have you seen the car since the accident?
Yeah, I've seen pictures of it, and it obviously, from what happened, it wasn't they weren't able to reconstruct it or anything.
They didn't just throw a new radiator on it and you're driving it around? Nothing like that? My point is, was it terribly, was it completely wrecked? Was it smashed in?
Yeah, it was everything was pretty smashed in.
Gotcha.
And it's just I don't understand how I am now, how I don't have brain damage, how I can walk. I was in awe, after my parents told me this story, and how I wasn't paralyzed and how none of that happened.
Yeah, it's crazy. So okay, so this sort of takes me up to me talking to your mom in the hospital, and I'm not going to remember it all correctly, but she started running over your injuries with me, and I even remember thinking, wow, that doesn't sound promising in any real way. Do you know what the initial... what did the hospital staff initially tell your parents about your condition when you got in there? What were their expectations for you? The Omnipod tubeless insulin pump is a 2-part system. It is completely waterproof, and it simplifies the management of your insulin-dependent diabetes. The Omnipod system's innovative design allows you to live your life and manage your diabetes with freedom, comfort, and convenience. This small waterproof pod and the handheld personal diabetes manager communicate wirelessly to deliver continuous insulin based on your personal settings. Now listen, the idea of not being tethered to something is everything, in my opinion. You hear people talk all the time about, I wanted a pump, but I didn't want to feel like a robot. Well, I get that. But with the Omnipod, you just apply the pod and you're not connected to anything. And before you know it, and I have worn one, and my daughter's worn one since she was 4, and she's 14 now. But before you know it, and this is my experience, you just forget it's there. Because it's tubeless, it allows you to swim or involve yourself in any of your physical activities without disconnecting from your insulin. I believe that it's incredibly important to have a constant stream of insulin when you have type 1 diabetes. I don't like the idea of I had to take it off to take a shower, I had to take it off to go play a sport, I had to take it off for 9,000 reasons. I love the pump because it is with you all of the time, constantly delivering the insulin that you need. And it's tubeless, and it's easy, and it rocks. Go to myomnipod.com/juicebox to find out more, or click on the links in your show notes or at juiceboxpodcast.com. Oh, did I mention the demo was free and it had absolutely no obligation attached to it? There's genuinely no reason why you shouldn't do this. It'll take you 2 minutes online now. The pump will come to your house. You can give it a shot. What did the hospital staff initially tell your parents about your condition when you got in there? What were their expectations for you?
On the first night there, they didn't think I was going to make it, and they knew that they were going to have to take out one of my kidneys, take out my spleen. They thought that I broke both of my legs, which
I'm sorry, you cut out for a second.
My jaw was broken.
You cut out for a second. They thought you were going to, they thought both your legs were broken, but...
Yeah, they thought both of my legs were broken, but neither are broken. And then they thought my jaw was broken, but it wasn't broken. They were just giving a whole list of injuries to my parents. And then because of you and my community, everyone reached out and was praying, and all these small miracles happened overnight. The next day, they were like, oh, her lungs are getting better, because they thought I wasn't able to breathe on my own, but then soon I was. All these small little miracles were happening. But yeah, I still had to get my kidney taken out, my spleen taken out, and I broke my right wrist, and I had to get surgery on that and my my finger, and then multiple breaks in my back and neck, and I wore a back brace and neck brace. But most of those are all temporary. Yeah, I'll have to live with one kidney for the rest of my life, but like it's just like that's not as bad as it could have been.
Of course, no. I mean, it's incredibly fortunate, honestly. Okay, so you said a lot there. So first of all, I didn't do anything. I appreciate you saying that, but all I did was I put up a special like bonus episode of the podcast, and I asked for people to send there was a link that they could go to at the hospital to send you messages. And I was just like, do that. And I was even scared when I told your mom, I'd be happy to do that. But I thought, what if people don't do it? But can you tell me about how many messages you got from the people listening to this podcast?
It was really so nice that you made that small podcast on me, because I received so many letters, like hundreds of letters when I was in the hospital. Like I got letters from Spain and different parts all over the world, and no one even knew me, and they were sending me these kind letters, and my sisters read them to me at night, and it not only helped me, but it helped my family to know that they weren't alone. And I have a binder full of them, and I still look at them whenever I need inspiration, and they all just show like how the type 1 community is there, will always be there for each other, and that reaching out helped me get through all my injuries.
I'm really happy that it had that impact, and I can't thank everyone enough who took the time to reach out to Izzy. That was really special. I was so scared it would be like 3 people, and because I just felt like I was promising in that moment. I felt like I was making a promise to your mom, like I will, don't worry, I'll do something, and people will reach out, because what she would say is that the delivery system for the people's notes were sort of like they went into a queue, and then I guess the hospital actually printed them and gave them to you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so she said like there'd be certain times a day where just 50 or 100 of them would show up at once, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's great, and I just thought, thank God that everybody did that. Like I was really pleased for you guys, because I couldn't imagine how much you needed at that moment.
Yeah, we did.
Just a distraction or some hope or anything like that. So after the first night when they said, hey, I don't even understand. By the way, I don't even in my wildest dreams understand what you do when someone tells you we're not 100% sure your child's going to survive overnight. And so the next day when you're still there and things are slowly improving, then it became more about triaging your injuries and getting you on different paths of healing. So did the spleen and the kidney come out the day of the accident? Like, did you come in and were those taken out like in emergency surgeries?
Yeah, they were. So I came in and they performed that surgery, and they had to leave me open overnight and go back in the morning to see if they could, or if they had to take anything else out. And they expected that they would have to. But then in the morning they went back in and everything looked fine, and they closed me up, and they told my family that it was a miracle that happened, because they were expecting that there would for sure be other injuries.
Yeah, Izzy, you're a tough woman. So seriously. Wow, how long were you in the hospital?
About 3 weeks. And I was supposed to be in there for 6 to 8 weeks from like a normal person, like who would go through that amount of injury.
So I'm not going to stick on the injuries too long, but why would someone try to call me now, Izzy, while we're doing this? Hold on a second. So, but broken wrist, that definitely did happen, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that needed, I'm assuming, surgery and things like that?
Yeah, and then I wore a cast on my right arm for 6 weeks after the surgery.
And you mentioned a finger. Was it disfigured? Did it have to be fixed as well?
Yeah, so there's like metal, not in my finger, but like on the back of my hand, there's metal inside, because I broke a bunch of small bones in that, and like my fingers were like disfigured at the time.
Yeah, I bet. And okay, so I know what a kidney does, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. I have to admit, I don't really know what a spleen does, but I guess it doesn't do too much because you're talking to me pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the doctors, like, we've asked the doctors, why do we have spleens? The doctors were just like, it's kind of unknown. Like, we don't know that much about the spleen, but we do know that it helps, like, with bacterial infections. So like every time I get a fever, I have to go to the doctor and get tested. If it's bacterial, then I'd have to stay in the hospital and like get treated by the doctors there because I don't have a spleen to take care of the bacterial infection.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, by the way, that's horrible, but
yeah.
like the spleen doesn't do anything except keep you out of the hospital if you have a bacterial infection. Structurally to your face, they thought your jaw was broken, but it wasn't. But there must have been, I'm assuming, some fairly significant damage to your face at the time.
Yeah, at the time, like my parents said, like my face wasn't really recognizable. Like it was all like puffy and red and like covered in bruises, and like now there's like 2 small scratches that are barely noticeable on my face, which is amazing.
Yeah, I saw a picture of you recently who were you with? Ryan Reed?
Yeah,
Yes.
I went to one of his race car events and met him there.
Right. And I was going to say, like, I'm looking at you in the photo and I don't think to myself, there's a person who was in a horrible accident. Like you don't look like that, which is phenomenal and bizarre and fantastic, you know?
Yeah.
Okay. So so you're in the hospital. Now I've corresponded back and forth with your mom in this time a couple of times. And I really did struggle with how much to be supportive and how much to leave her alone because I don't really like know you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find my spot in this. But I would check in with her sometimes, and there was this one time that she and I spoke, and I thought like I'd never been more proud of a person who I never met before, and this is me feeling this way about you. And she told me that you were in the hospital. It was in the beginning days of all of this, and you wanted your insulin pump back because you didn't like the way they were managing your blood sugar. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So when I was there, there really wasn't any cross-management between a trauma patient and a patient with a chronic illness like diabetes. So the entire time, my mom was like trying to help the nurses and trying to take over, like saying like she knows what to do. And like I didn't want to ever eat because I would be 300 and they'd make me eat like 50 carbs and stuff food down me. And then they wouldn't give me insulin till 30 minutes later. So I'd go to like 400. And, you know, you have to have a good blood sugar to heal. Like if you don't have a good blood sugar, it's going to be even harder to heal. And like the nurses were great and the doctors were great. They saved my life. But the one thing was there was just no cross management between my diabetes and then the trauma I went through.
Right. I just thought, well, that's a common story, first of all. Like most people who you hear of in extended hospital stays with diabetes say that just no one considered my blood sugar. And to your point, and it's always my point as well, is that healing is so tied to like in control blood sugars, right? Like it's just such a counterintuitive idea. Like, oh, we need this person to heal, but we're going to let their blood sugar be 300. Like, just, okay. And so,
right. Yeah.
But as your mom's explaining it to me, I was just so like, I don't know what I was, to be honest, but I was, like I said, I was really proud of you. I was like, here's a person who just went all through all this. This happened because your blood sugar got low, and you're still saying, hey, I need more insulin. What are you people doing? Like, seriously, because this is so important for people to hear, Izzy, that because I don't think much worse could have happened to you unless you ended up dead, honestly. Like, this is pretty incredibly terrible. And so... And still, you weren't dissuaded from what you knew you needed to stay healthy in regards to your type 1.
Yeah.
And I don't know how, I'm so interested in how you got to that point in just 4 years and at your age. Like, why do you feel so strongly about it, I guess?
So before I was really tightly controlled and like 9 months after my diagnosis. So I was like, that allowed me to like micromanage and kind of act like a bionic pancreas. And like, I would see myself going low. I'd drink juice really fast. And then like, if I saw myself creeping up, I'd like give a small dose. I've always just been a perfectionist and was really hard because I also wanted to be in the perfect range. Like I got my A1C to like how a normal person without type 1 diabetes would be. It actually got to a 5.1 at one point. But even at that point, I only had 1% of hypoglycemia because I had the I guess after my accident, like just having that perfectionist mindset still in my head. I just wanted to like have my blood sugar down, and I just kind of knew like I'm not going to be able to heal well if my blood sugar is this high.
Yeah. Well, it's really, I mean, you would think, like from an outsider's point of view, that this would happen to you, and you would think, hey, you know what, I'm going to just be okay with 200 for a while. But you really weren't. You just really didn't lose focus of what was important. And it is really something that we talk about on the podcast once in a while. And I've said it a bunch of times, and that, you know, people will say like, well, what about like overnight or this, or, you know, you don't want something terrible to happen. And of course, no one wants something terrible to happen, but that idea of trading now for later is real. You can't pretend that leaving your blood sugar high for years isn't going to have some effect on you down the road. It's going to be detrimental.
Yeah.
And so how do you safely do this? And do you still have any idea how? Because I'm like, as we think back to the timeline of the accident, like, you know, what time did you give yourself insulin? It was hours before, right? Like it all caught up to you at once and just kind of pushed you down. Do you know, like, let me ask you this. Do you know what your blood sugar was when the EMS got to the accident scene? Very few times in my life has something or someone surpassed my expectations every time I've had contact with them. Years and years ago, Arden started using a Dexcom continuous glucose monitor when they were at version, like, I forget what it was called, like 7+. And it was an amazing leap. It wasn't perfect, but it was so much better than what we had prior. And then they came out with a new revision. I think that was the G4, then there was the G5, and now there's the G6. And each time a new product has come to market, things have gotten better and easier and more accurate, and they've helped to make diabetes a smaller part of our life. I think that's an old tagline from Omnipod, but it really does fit in this example. The Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor feeds back the information from my daughter that allows us to make adjustments to her blood sugar that keep her blood sugar where we want it to be. In a life where nothing is assured, the Dexcom G6 is the closest thing I've seen to comfort, convenience, and confidence in over a decade of living with type 1 diabetes. And I bet you the next version, whenever it comes out, I'm not saying I know, but I bet you it's better again. Dexcom, their employees, and the products they make are absolutely life-changing. And I believe, forget you, for me, I want to be involved with them. As long as they're making diabetes devices, I want my daughter using them. Consider going to dexcom.com/juicebox today to get started with the Dexcom continuous glucose monitor. Do you know what your blood sugar was when the EMS got to the accident scene?
I'm pretty sure it was 31.
Did you seize? Do you know?
No, I hadn't ever seized before that.
Okay. And did you have a seizure then, or did you just black out, or did they not really put a description on what happened to you?
They didn't really put a description on, but I think I just blacked out in the car.
Where do you feel your lows at? Like, when do you start thinking, oh, I need something?
So before the accident, since I was so tightly controlled, I had a really hard time feeling my lows. Mm-hmm. And that's why I use the Dexcom to always catch my lows. Like, it's kind of like a GPS. Like, if you learn how to drive off a GPS, you never actually learn the directions, and you're kind of dependent on the machine. And that's kind of how I was with my Dexcom.
Right.
So I didn't really feel them until I got in the low 50s before the accident.
Okay. And in a dropping situation, now you feel them when? I'm sorry.
Now I kind of feel them in the 60s because I've been trying to run myself a little higher, but obviously still taking good care of myself, especially with the one kidney. But I just find myself that I'm not spending as many hours like micromanaging everything, and I just like try to stay stable, but like between 120 and 140. Between
about 120 and 140?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's still, it's, that's excellent. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nothing. That's nothing to be ashamed of. That's for certain. Yeah, and so because you are now how many months removed from the accident?
About 9 months.
9 months. Wow, you bounce back faster than Carson Wentz. which is a football reference that only people in Philadelphia might understand, but that's fine. It is such an incredible turnaround in such a short amount of time. Are you astonished by it sometimes?
I am. Like, it doesn't feel like it happened this year. Like, I missed a whole quarter of school, college applications, and AT, which I'm still working on my applications now, but I'm mostly all caught up now, and it just kind of feels like it never really happened, even though it was like such a big part of my life.
It's so interesting too, even when I was talking about this with my son in the last 6 months about the passage of time and that idea that sometimes a day can drag on forever. A week can feel like it takes forever, but then a month feels like it goes by in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
And, and then you sit down at Christmas and you think it was just Christmas. Like, how did this happen? But how many days did I live through that at 2:00 in the afternoon? I was like, oh my God, this day's never going to end. And, and so the time is, as you get older, you'll see, as you get older, you start having a different feeling about it. But when you're younger, things feel like they're flying by constantly. And it really is, it's just really kind of spectacular how quickly you bounce back. Have you always, I know this is going to sound like a random question, but have you always been like a fast healer? Like, do you get a cut and then wake up the next morning and go, oh my God, it's gone? Or seriously?
Like, I've never been one to complain a lot, or like didn't really talk about my diabetes to a lot of people because like I didn't want to be like dramatic or anything, and it was kind of embarrassing for me to talk about it. So like I always tried to push through my pain, and like, which I think like has made me stronger, but has also taught me that being so like I isolated myself because of my diabetes, but from the accident I have definitely like reached out and like been more open about it and been more accepting about my diabetes. But no, I wouldn't call myself a faster healer. I would just say that I'm like going off the perfectionist thing. Like, I just like tried like everything to get better like right away because I do not like being independent on other or dependent on other people.
I hear you. So you just willed your way through it. You were like, I don't care if I drove into a giant boulder or not. I have to get up now and do other stuff. And what kind of other stuff do you do? Did you play sports in school?
I played volleyball, and I actually quit right before my accident because, I mean, I loved volleyball, and I was, and I like to be libero for my school, but like I did not like having high blood sugar and not being able to, and I was always worried about that. And now looking back on that, I feel like if I ran myself a little higher and just like accepted things, then it might have been different.
So this is very interesting because you mentioned a 5.1 A1C at one point, which is insane. And my daughter's last A1C was 5.4. The only real difference there's two differences between you with a 5.1 and her with a 5.4. Two things is that I'm helping her with her management, so it's not all on her.
Yeah. And
the other thing is that I don't worry about spikes too much if they happen. Like if you could see most of Arden's 24-hour like Dexcom graphs, she gets high a couple times a day. And to us high is like 150 or 160, and we'll do something about it. Every once in a while, something happens where you're like, oh geez, like last night she went to get in the shower and her blood sugar was like 73. And I said, why don't you just wait a second? Like I have a feeling it's going to try to fall. And so the arrow kind of turned diagonal down. And she's like, I know what to do. And she grabs food and eats it and goes and takes a shower. And while she's upstairs in the shower, like I see her blood sugar, it goes to 75, it stays. It goes to 85, it stays. It goes to 90, it stays. And I was like, oh, wow, she really did a good job with this. And I stopped paying attention to it. And then she's downstairs. And in my mind, she takes really long showers. So I was like, this has been a while.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I hear like the beep, beep that she's going over 120. And I look and her arrow's straight up. And I thought, it's funny, I'd forgotten about it. I said, what did you eat? And she's like, when I was like at 70, I was like, yeah, what'd you eat? She goes, I had 2 Oreos. And I was like, oh, well, we should have given you some insulin for those Oreos. And so I'm like, let's try this. Gave her a little bit. And 5 minutes later, her blood sugar was like shooting up. And so I bolused more. And an hour and a half later, hour and a half later, she was like back to like 135, and she was in this steady decline that happened, 135, 130, very slowly over the next hour or so. And she was really great overnight. The blood sugar was pretty stable overnight, around like 95 or 100. But I'm not like, I don't like, unlike the way you're describing, like that doesn't make me mental. I don't feel like, oh my God, we screwed up, or like, I just don't have those feelings. But there was a point in time where when stuff like that was happening to you, you felt like, oh no, I'm supposed to be doing better than this. And you don't feel like that anymore. And that's good, by the way, because you shouldn't feel like that. Yeah. So it would have been nice if you could have figured that out without driving into a rock. Don't get me wrong. But I'm glad that positive things are coming out of this. Seriously. How does this do? This is a completely ridiculous question. What does something like this do for your overall popularity in high school? Do you become like that girl that lived through the car accident?
I mean, kind of. Like, everyone knows who I am now. Like, you'll mention my name, and even like people from last year will be like, "Oh yeah, I know who that is."
Are they like, that girl almost died? Like, right?
Maybe not in front of me, but I'm sure they say that.
Oh my God, you're walking down the hall at least 20 times a day. Somebody's like, that girl almost died. You know that girl? And so, no, so to be serious about that for a second, I don't have that experience in my life. I've not come close to. Well, you know what? That's a lie. I've been in a couple of motorcycle accidents as a young person where I looked up and thought, I almost ate that telephone pole. But I wasn't hurt. Like, do you know what I mean? I just went flying through the air and was kind of okay. And so, do you have enough distance from this at this point? Do you have enough maturity, enough perspective to tell me what it's like to come that close?
I mean, yeah, like, it doesn't bother me thinking about it or anything. It's just hard just if I don't remember the accident.
I gotcha. So you think maybe if it was more of a you like actually experiencing it consciously, like if it was just an accident, that you think maybe you'd have more perspective, but you just fell asleep, woke up, and were hurt.
Yeah. The first thing I really remember, or the first thing I do remember, is waking up on Saturday morning, and the accident was on Tuesday. But the first thing I remember was waking up, they took the breathing tube out, and I said, "What's my blood sugar?"
That's a girl. Very good. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
What's my blood sugar? I know you people aren't doing this right, and I'm on a roll here with my A1C. So, and did people laugh at that?
No, like. No. It was just because like it was the first words I talked, and like I was just confused. Like I thought I asked my parents, like, did I go low overnight? Like I thought I was in the hospital from an overnight low or something. And then they told me I was in a car accident, and then I asked like if anyone else was hurt.
Nice. See how nice you are? Jeez. I probably wasn't your car, right? Who lost their car in this? Your mom or your dad, by the way?
It was my car.
It was your car? What kind of car was it? Because it held up. It kept you alive.
It was a Ford Escape.
All right, Ford Escape. Well done.
Yeah.
Well done. So now here's my next question. From your perspective, do your parents, do they treat you differently? Like, did life change around your house? Are people more... I don't know. Like, does everybody feel like they're on borrowed time with you, or has it been weird, or how do you find your interactions with your loved ones?
I mean, like, at first, the first few months, like, my dad stayed home, skips a ton of work. My mom was by my side 24/7. Both of my two older sisters, like, took time off of college and came home, and they would come visit, like, every single weekend to make sure I was okay and, like, just spend as much as time with me. And they still do, but I mean, not as much like a 24/7 watch anymore. But like,
have you ever looked across the room and thought, "Oh my God, they're staring at me"?
Well, my mom might have done that before my accident, anyway. But yeah, I have caught them staring at me before.
So it's very, obviously it's not apples to apples, but and you have two older sisters, right? So you have two.
Yeah.
You're the youngest, but my son just left for college a few weeks ago, and we went and visited him there's a family weekend. 3 weeks into the time, and we're eating dinner before we're getting ready to drop him back off at his dorm and go home. And I had to stop myself from just like looking at him. Like in the course of a regular dinner conversation, your eyes go all over the place. You start talking to this person, talk here. And I just found myself thinking like, look at him because he's going to leave. And then I had to stop myself because like, don't be a creepy person. Like that was my second thought. Like stare at him. No, you know what? Don't be creepy. But it is, I'm just imagining that they reverted in their minds to you being an infant again. And they were just like, oh my God, like don't let her pick that up off the floor. Don't let this happen. Don't let that happen. Like stare at her. I can't really imagine. Your mom was, I thought when I was speaking to your mom, she was incredibly strong, and I felt like she was dazed, and that seemed very expected to me. Do you? So now 9 months later, how frequently do you think about it, or do you not?
I mean, I don't think about it as much as I used to. Like when I was in my braces, like I just had that to remind me every day. But now, besides like the scars I have, like I don't really think about it as often. So like maybe like once or twice a day, I'll just think about it, but like not for a long time. Just like, oh yeah, that happened.
I have this like when I think about you, which I do sometimes, but again, not a creepy amount. And so, but when I think about you, I always my brain jumps to the randomness of what happened to you because your blood sugar got really low and you lost consciousness. You happened to be driving. Had that happened during your A1C or your excuse me, so many acronyms. You were in SAT prep, right? When you were in your prep class, ACT prep. When you were in your ACT prep class, had it just happened then there would have just been a panicked like person in a library going, "Hey, can someone help me? This girl just slumped over on the table." And someone would have come and given you a little glucagon or done whatever they did, and you would have sat up and been like, "Yo, what's up?" And your life would have went forward from there. It's the randomness of it that throws me off because think of all the things, the confluence of things that had to happen. Like you go have a meal that's uncommon for you, so you're not as sure about how to bolus for it. But you do know I'm going to stop this arrow. I'm going to stop my blood sugar from going up. Then it levels out on you, and you're in a good spot. And then you live for a long time after that with a blood sugar that looks really great. You feel fine. Listen, Dexcom I think is an amazing tool, but it's still a machine. And I mean, we've all had a moment where somebody's seen a quick drop on a blood sugar and it takes it 5 minutes to catch up and say, it happens. I mean, see, even that's random. I bet you that I see that happen to Arden once or twice a year. I'm like, oh, wow, she's lower than it says she is. And in a situation where it's like, oh, let's do something about it. But then that had to happen to you then. Like in that, like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's so much randomness to it, which is sort of the beauty of life and also what can scare some people about it. But I want to ask you, like right now today, would you consider yourself a person who sees the beauty in the randomness, or are you afraid of it now?
Dancing for Diabetes spreads awareness through the art of dance to better educate the community, raise funds to find a cure, and inspire those with diabetes to live healthy and active lives. Please join us on November 10th for the 18th annual Dancing for Diabetes at the Bob Carr Theater in downtown Orlando. Tickets are on sale now at drphillipscenter.org. You do not want to miss this.
Would you consider yourself a person who sees the beauty in the randomness, or are you afraid of it now?
No, I mean, I definitely see the beauty in the randomness because even though that everything that could have went wrong that day went wrong, like you said, like the food I ate, which made me go high, and then the stacking, which eventually got me down, and my CGM said that I was stabilized. but I actually probably wasn't, even though that was wrong. And like all this random things, I still see like the beauty in it because it's definitely made me more accepting of my disease, and I've immersed myself more in the type 1 community. Before, I really didn't know that many type 1s, and there was no one at my school, no one at my volleyball teams, and I didn't want to go meet any type 1s because I was just like, well, I don't want to, like this disease isn't me, so like I don't really care about meeting other people. But after I saw how the community reached out to me, I realized that I had been missing out, and meeting so many type 1s has just helped me get through so much.
Yeah. Well, so a couple of things. Describe a little bit for me before this happened. Like when you said you kept to yourself about it, like were you hiding? Like what kind of pump do you have?
Omnipod.
Okay. And so like, was that something you would hide or you didn't care if someone saw it? You just weren't going to be the person to engage in a conversation about it?
I mean, like, I don't really, like, it was never really like outside that people could see. Like, it was always under my clothes. Mm-hmm. So like, I guess it was kind of hidden, but like, I wasn't really purposely doing that. But like, when I bolus for food, like I would try to like do it like in my pocket, so like kind of secretively, like just so like no one would make a big deal out of it, because I like didn't want to have to answer all these questions. Like my friends knew and stuff, but even with them, like I would still kind of try to be like I would try to hide it a little. But
I gotcha.
Now like the whole city knows, and a bunch of people around the world know. So like
you're out
it's
now.
Out.
Yeah. Well, because so you did you do work with the JDRF in your town prior to this?
Yeah, I did. I was a JDRF ambassador my sophomore year, so I did some of that. But I was playing volleyball at the time, so like I had to miss a bunch of events, and like and yeah, I went to all like there's like a thing called Type 1 Teens Dance in Cincinnati, so I went to all those for 4 years. And
your chapter, tell everybody what chapter you belong to of the JDRF.
Oh, Southwest, right?
Yeah. And so somebody sent me, it was a video of you speaking at, I guess, the gala, maybe?
Yeah.
Right, a number of months ago. And yeah. What I thought was, hey, I heard this girl wasn't like talking very much about this stuff, and you were up there really, really doing a great job. And I have to ask you a question, because I've wondered about this for a while. Mm-hmm. During your talk, I felt like you were talking about the podcast without mentioning it once. Were you, or did I misunderstand that? Because you were talking about support you got from the community, and I thought you were talking about like the letters and everything, like at the hospital. Is that what you meant, or what were you talking about in that when you gave that speech? Yeah,
it was like for sure, like mostly like all the letters I received from the podcast, and then just like the people from the JDRF of Southwest Ohio like sent me like even more cards, like specifically just from that, but like
nice. Mostly
just like all the people around the world who have type 1 or who are living with someone with type 1, from you mentioning me in your podcast, that were just sending me all this love.
So all I'm saying is, what happened was I was watching it, and my wife was working from home, and she watched it too. And I said, I think she's talking about the podcast. My wife's like, she's not talking about you. Shut up. And I was like, I don't mean it like that. She just always thinks I'm... Anyway, we've been married way too long. But that's not the point. So yeah, you're giving this big talk, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. There's a huge group of people. And then a month or so later, your chapter contacted me about speaking at your Type 1 Nation event, which I'm going to come out and do pretty soon. So we're going to get to meet in person, which I'm really looking forward to.
I am too.
Yeah. It's great that you found community in some way. I'm so sorry, obviously, how it happened. But yeah. But I think it's important, because you described just being alone and being the only one in your school. Like even Arden has a handful of kids with type 1 diabetes in the school. And even though my daughter's not friendly with the people who have type 1 in her school, and not for any reason other than they're maybe in different grades or just not in her friend circle or whatever. Mm-hmm. But she knows they're there. You know what I mean? Like they walk by each other in the hall. There's got to be some sort of a feeling of, hey, that kid's got diabetes like me. And And my daughter does also have a couple of really good friends that she's met online that have type 1. So she has that as well, which is, I see, it's interesting how I see it, because I think Arden thinks about herself the way you do. And I don't believe she sits around thinking, oh, I have diabetes, or, I'm a person. I don't think she has a lot of those thoughts. But I do see sometimes she'll say to me, like, I was talking to Yanni the other day, and her blood sugar's like this, and mine was like that. Like, there's just this, and hey, Yanni, what's up? Because I think she listens and her mom does. But there's just that nice moment where there's some sameness, you know, and I'm really happy for you that you have that now too. Can you tell me, are you doing, like, what's the concern as far as the doctors have told you about being a person with type 1 and having one kidney?
So there really hasn't been too many people in the world who have experienced having type 1 with one kidney, so there's not that many, like, things that they can compare it to, but they said, like, keeping your blood sugar under control is the main thing with having one kidney. Like, that's what's gonna keep that kidney healthy, and so I can live like just like a normal person would, which kind of makes it a little, like, even harder for me than it was before, because I feel like I have to make my blood sugar even better. But, like, obviously I know that excuse me.
No, of course.
Obviously I know that, like, I've released all, like, a bunch of stress of going high and stuff, but then having one kidney makes me stressed out too, because I feel like my blood sugar needs to be more under control. But the doctor said, like, as long as it's, in a normal A1C, like, I really shouldn't have any complications with it.
I have to tell you something, Haley. If this wasn't such a sad story, I would totally call this episode "Having One Kidney Makes Me Really Stressed Out." But I won't be doing that. But still, as you said it, I was like, oh, that's the title of the episode. Well, listen, I can't imagine, like, diabetes is already enough. People who have type 1 don't need anything else. They don't need healthcare concerns. They don't need insulin pricing concerns. They don't need one kidney concerns. They've really got enough already. But this is, as if there was a good time to have something like this happen to you, which there's not. It's not a terrible time, because I know you're, like, I think you're still using the Omnipod, right?
Yes.
Okay. And, we are all very close to artificial pancreas world, where your range should be able to be, more closely controlled without so much effort from you, and hopefully, on that device that's coming in the future, hopefully that low blood sugar really doesn't happen. Maybe, like, maybe that's the. I mean, are you excited about that technology? Is that where you're headed, or have you?
Yeah. For sure, I'm so excited about that technology, and it would make such a difference in my life. And even if, like, Omnipod had the low glucose suspend anytime soon, like, I'd for sure, like, get that right away, and because that would help me so much through college, and because I'm going to be leaving next year. So
I just said to somebody just the other day that, my short-term, long-term goal for Arden is for the Horizon system from Omnipod to be ready before she goes to college. Like, I think that would be such a big deal for her. And I have to say, I think you're right on, because just watching my son for the last 3 or 4 weeks, he'd be so pissed if he knew I talked about him on this podcast, but he'll never know. But so he's, on the baseball team at his college. And so he's an incredibly fit person. Like, he's one of those people who takes off his shirt and you're like, wow, like, he should be, like, in a magazine, and incredibly athletic, incredibly fit, good eater, all this stuff. But he gets to college. It's his first time living away from home. Practice starts a few days in. A week and a half later, he gets a bad head cold. He gets it into his mind that he wants to eat healthier, because while he doesn't eat badly, he's still got some junk food in his diet, and he doesn't eat enough greens. So he starts to flip his whole thing around, and now he's sick. He's overtaxed with school, and now, practices that are now happening daily, and getting up to lift weights at 5 o'clock in the morning. In just 3 weeks, I found myself thinking, how would he do this if he had type 1? Like, I know he could, But at the moment, I can't imagine how. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and so I just thought, oh my gosh, like this is, and I thought about all of you, like just all the kids who are leaving for college and have type 1 and have varying levels of understanding of their management. And so you have a little bit of time left. What's your, like, is this your new normal where you're keeping your blood sugar and you think this is how it's going to be? Do you think you'll start to like tighten it down again closer to where you were? Like, what do you have an idea about that? Or are you just sort of going with it for now?
I mean, I really like where I am now. Like, just trying to stay between 120 and 140. That's where I feel my best, and I have a cushion if I drop for some random reason. But I obviously.
Let me just say, if you told me, Scott, I almost quit high school and sat in a room surrounded by pillows and sugar just in case, like I would be like, that makes sense to me. You know, like if you said to me, I haven't driven since then, but you really are pushing ahead. Like you drive, right? You're back at it.
Yes.
Did you get a better car? Like, what did you ask for this time? Like, you were probably in a position to get a really good car. You know, you could have been like, Mom, you know, it would be much safer if I had a Land Rover. And so, like, did you play? Forget all that question. Let's go back, Izzy. How much of your adolescent brain is manipulating your parents based off of the guilt they must feel over what happened to you? Have you been shooting for better birthday presents, better vacations? What is it you're doing to those poor people? You tell me about that now.
Well, the biggest thing would probably be making them get me a dog.
Good for you. Yeah. I mean, why not, right?
Yeah, so we actually have 2 dogs now. We just got one a few months ago, and she's almost 4 pounds now.
So here's how I imagine it. Your parents are in bed at night. It's late. You guys are asleep. Your sisters are gone. And one of them turns to the other one and goes, the one that almost died in the car accident wants a dog. How are we going to say no to that? And then you're like in your room like Snidely Whiplash, which is something you don't even understand. It's just a reference. And you're like wringing your hands together like an evil genius. Like, I got a dog. Like, what do I do next with this new power? Seriously, you're like a wizard at this point. You just need to wish for something in front of those 2 people, and it's going to happen. What do you want? You should test this, Izzy. Tell them you want the ceiling in your room painted black and see if they don't go to like Home Depot this weekend and start buying paint. You'll stop them before they do it. You know what I mean? But seriously, I think you're in a power position still. Don't let too much time go by because they're going to be like, oh, you know what? We've forgotten about that already. You really got to strike while the iron's hot here. We should make a list of things you need and really get to it is what I'm saying. Are you dating?
I am.
Is this a guy? I'm sorry, a girl. Is this person somebody before the accident or?
No, I have a boyfriend and we met after my accident.
I see. This accident's been a real boon for you. Besides the spleen and the kidney thing and all the incredible injuries and pain and suffering.
It's a funny story because we actually met after the gala that I spoke at, and he kind of just congratulated me off of that, and then we just kind of like started hanging out after that.
I hear what you're saying. Listen, any 17-year-old boy who's got the wherewithal to say, "Hey, good job on speaking at a gala," you got to imagine it's a pretty good kid. Because are you finding him to be a nice boy so far?
Yes.
Yes.
He's actually a type 1 diabetic too.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And does he go to your school?
No, he's actually a year older than me.
Oh, I see. How are our parents with that? Well, what are they going to say? You almost died in a car accident. You're fine. Don't worry about it.
No, they're okay with it. They really like him.
Yeah. Izzy, you're not seeing this right. They're good with anything that doesn't end with you not being alive anymore. You're really in the driver's seat here, like literally and figuratively. I'm sorry. I'm so glad you have a good sense of humor because it's just such a sad story. Like if we didn't laugh, I'm not sure what we would have done for the last hour. Seriously.
No, it's okay. Even my dad's made a joke, like, even on the day of my accident, like, I missed the turn into my house, and, like, he was driving me back from somewhere, like, a month ago, and he's like, so you turn here to get back home.
That's what you need is well, yeah, see, but that's a good indication that you're going to lose your magic power soon, so
yeah.
You got to get, like, really, like, apply to a really expensive school or something right now, like, something like that. You got to get out of Ohio. Isn't it cold there in the winter?
Yeah, it's pretty cold here in the winter.
A little south wouldn't hurt. You know what I mean? Not to where those hurricanes are, though. I don't know. There's nowhere to live. By the way, honestly, none of this matters because I don't know if you've seen the projections today that the temperature of the Earth is going to rise 7 degrees in the next 90. We're all just going to cook to death anyway. It's not really going to matter. So what do you have planned? Do you know what you want to do in college? It's such a silly question, I think, but maybe you have a thought.
Yeah, so even before my accident, I've always wanted to go into nursing, which probably was just because I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and I've never really seen myself in business. I've always wanted to be around helping people, and then just after my accident, that kind of made me want to be a nurse even more, to see how much the nurses there helped me, and how I could even help eventually with cross management between trauma patients and chronic illnesses especially diabetes. So that's always been my dream, to be a nurse.
That's excellent. You think do you have the aptitude? Are you kind of science and math minded?
Yes.
Good for you.
That's I am.
Excellent. Yeah. Oh, very nice. You have any schools in mind?
Well, I've really just been looking at schools in Ohio, OSU, Miami, and UC. I really haven't toured that many out of state yet.
Yeah, listen, you don't have to. You're probably used to the cold. I mean, as soon as they invited me to your thing, I was like, what month is it? Am I going to freeze? That was my first question.
Yeah, it'll probably be cold when you're here.
And my next one is in a couple months in Phoenix. And so I was
wow.
They were like, hey, can you come out? I'm like, not in the summer. I had my fingers crossed. They're like, how's February? I'm like, yeah, I could do that. Just take me somewhere warm. There's an actor named Michael Caine, who you may not know. He's an older man at this point, but I heard him interviewed once, and he said, somebody asked him how he picks his projects, and he says, in the cold months, he's British, but I don't have a British accent. He goes, in the cold months, I pick warm weather locations. And in the warm months, I pick cold weather locations. And I was like, what an artist. Yeah, really. Guy's got his finger on the pulse of his art. He's like, I just want to be comfortable. I don't care about these movies. That's what I heard. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about?
I mean, really just so I can give advice to any type 1s out there is just to do your best to pre-treat. I try to do it 20 to 30 minutes before I actually eat my food, depending on what my blood sugar is. But if you can pre-treat, that'll take so much of the pain away. If you pre-treat, you won't have a high that could later cause a low, and it helps keep you stable and feel good. And we didn't know to pre-treat until we listened to your podcast, because Children's Hospital never said anything about that. And pre-treating has made me feel so much better and just helped with my A1C and everything.
Oh, that's excellent. And listen, I'm going to go into that a little bit, but let me just preface it by saying I'm not judging anything about your situation, okay? But as you've explained it today, had you been more aggressive up front with that meal, right, then you would have gotten less of a spike, which would have then you wouldn't have had to have been so aggressive afterwards. And then all those hours later when that food left your system, because that's all that happened to you in that moment, is that the food finally got through your system, but there was still a bunch of insulin left behind.
Right, yeah.
So when you hear me tell people this whole thing's about timing and amount, that really resonates with you, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. There really isn't much more to it than that. You just have to have the right amount in at the right time. And when the food or when your physiological reason for your blood sugar wanting to be higher is gone, there can't be a ton of insulin left over. It's still working. It's pretty much it. Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. Izzy, I want to say that I'm really genuinely touched that you came on, because I thought there was a moment, months and months later when I was talking to your mom, and I said, I just said, if Izzy ever wants to come tell her story about this, she can. But please, if she never did, I would think nothing of it. And I'm not pressuring you, obviously. She could just do it. And what I heard from your mom, and actually from other people too, is that I don't know how comfortable she is talking about time. And you sounded so comfortable today. I'm so pleased for you of how far you've come through this in such a short amount of time. And that you wanted to do it here. It's really touching. So thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. And want to help inspire others and help others learn from what happened to me.
Well, Izzy, I think what you said is incredibly inspirational because here's the crux of what you said. Diabetes is not always easy. Some scary things can happen. They might try to kill you, those scary things. That doesn't mean that you can stop doing what you need to do. And I think that there's so much wisdom in that and bravery. And I really don't like the word bravery because I don't think people are brave because they want to be. I think people are brave because they have to be. But so maybe bravery is not the word. Like there's a conviction to what you're saying and a steadfastness to what you're saying that is incredibly just inspirational. Like, because I've been alive for almost 50 years and I've seen things in my life that have made me go, yeah, you know what? Let's just give up on that because, because that's too scary. And that easily could have happened to you. And that it didn't is, like I said, it's just monumentally inspiring. Like it really, really is. So I felt that the day I spoke to your mom, like when she said in the hospital, like Izzy was like, hey, what's my blood sugar? We got to get it down. I thought like, good for her. Like, that's like, wow. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe it's just your youth. Like maybe it's just your ignorance in youth. maybe if you were 30, you'd be like, hey, you know what? Never mind. But to hear you talk right at the end here about how to manage a meal, I just think that's spectacular. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. Well, I will see you. When am I going to see you? Hold on a second. Let's take a look. I am going to see you soon, right?
November. Yeah, I think it's like November
3rd and
3rd.
4th.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's like I come Saturday night for some dinner, and then the thing happens on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. That's the day after my 18th birthday.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, Izzy, I'm going to make people sing happy birthday to you during the lunch. Are you going to be, you have to come, are you going to come when I do the podcast live at lunch?
Probably.
And then I'm going to make everyone sing to you at the end. It's going to be incredibly embarrassing. I hope you're ready. So you're the girl that lived. I don't know what to say. Like you're the Harry Potter for Ohio. It really is. Seriously, I'll let you go in a second, but your overall attitude about this is uncommonly sunny, and I don't feel like you're hiding some horrible sadness by acting happy.
Yeah.
It really is a testament to, I don't know exactly what, but to how you were raised or who you are or a combination of a lot of things. But you should know that something like this, it stops most people from living well. And that you didn't have that reaction is such a great reflection on you. Mm-hmm. So seriously, like, well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know in your mind you don't see another way. Like that's because that's who I get from talking. Like that's who you are. You're like, I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to do this. But this would have stopped a lot of people. So really good for you. I do want to ask you this one last thing, but then I'll let you go. You're still using a Dexcom CGM?
Yes.
Yeah. And do you hold any like ill will about it not doing? Like you seem very reasonable because I believe the technology is not perfect and you can't count on it 100%. But it would be easy for you to be angry, but you don't seem so, are you?
I'm not mad at that because the Dexcom has saved my life multiple times. Like after a volleyball game, like when I'd go to like in the 30s at night, like it always caught that. So and I love the Dexcom. It really has helped me with a lot. And I just think it was because I didn't really learn my body and I like 100% trusted the machine. But like now I've learned to like listen to my feel not like understand how I'm feeling and not just rely on the Dexcom.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly smart. Like it just there's times when you have to just say, I know what this says, but my experience tells me differently.
Yeah.
And you made such a good point earlier in when we were talking about how you kind of were just treating it like a GPS and you never really learned the roads. And that is, again, that's another great thing for people to understand. Because for me, if Arden would have been in that situation that you described, there would have been a time where I would have been like, hey, we have to test here because we used a lot of insulin. And it's just experience. Like, I have that thought because I have 12 years of experience with it. You're 4 years into it. You know, so I'm going to think a lot about what you said about that GPS thing. So I appreciate that very much. Today's episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored, as always, by Dexcom, Omnipod, and Dancing for Diabetes. You can go to myomnipod.com/juicebox to get a free, no-obligation demo of the Omnipod right now. You can go to Dexcom.com/juicebox to find out more about the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor. And of course, you can go to dancingfordiabetes.com. That's dancing, the number 4, diabetes.com, just to see adorable pictures of children with diabetes dancing. There's other reasons to go, but the cute kids are the best reason. There's also links in the show notes and at juiceboxpodcast.com. When you click on them, it helps the show.
This is Izzy Meehan, and you're listening to the Juicebox I messed up. This is Izzy Meehan, and you're listening to the Juicebox Podcast.